pastor here, and we're grateful to be together to talk about things that we really care about: safety for our community, safety for our children, and in this time in our world, the common good is not as prevalent as it might be. So that we're gathered here tonight for the common good, for the values that we care about, is really wonderful. Thanks so much. I want to introduce Polly Zaccone, who is the president of the United Women in Faith.
Thank you, MaryLee, and welcome again, everyone, to tonight's forum. Tonight's meeting is sponsored by the Napa Methodist Church's chapter of United Women in Faith, which is a global organization focused on women, children, and youth. Our mission is to seek to connect and nurture women through Christian spiritual formation, leadership development, creative fellowship, and education, so that we can inspire, influence, and impact local and global communities. Throughout the year, we like to hold educational events for our members. But tonight's meeting was born out of a desire and need to not only learn about tonight's topics for our Napa United Women of Faith members, but for our entire Napa community as well. So without further ado, let me introduce you all to tonight's speakers, our moderators, and our topics this evening. Joining us tonight is Napa Police Chief Jennifer Gonzales, Vice Mayor and Council Member Bernie Narvaez, and Trustee Jane Donaldson, representing the Napa County Board of Education. Our moderators will lead tonight's discussion. Lorrie will address gun violence in Napa, policies on police actions, and procedures in place for school violence. Connie will address agencies' approach to issues of ICE, hate group activities in Napa County, diversity in education, and book bans. And Sally Archambault will inquire about communication within our community and public safety and awareness. We realize that tonight's topics may generate some questions from our audience, but we want to make sure that our speakers have plenty of time to discuss all these important issues. So tonight, we have question and comment cards available for all of you. Please feel free to write down your questions and your comments, and our ushers will collect them between our moderators' introductions of each topic. We will make sure that at the end of tonight's forum, your cards will be compiled and given to our speakers. If we have time at the end of the presentations, we may read a few of your submitted questions. Now, before we begin tonight's forum, I would like to introduce Anna Chouteau from Congressman Mike Thompson's office, who will read a letter from Mike Thompson about gun violence prevention. Anna?
Thank you so much, everyone. Congressman Mike Thompson really has been a champion on this issue, and he would want to be here tonight, but he's in D.C. doing very important work, so he sent me on his behalf to read a letter for you all. Dear friends, I wish I could be with you tonight, but work has me in Washington, D.C. for legislative business. Thank you to the United Women in Faith and Napa Methodist Church for bringing our community together today to advance public safety. Since 2020, gun violence has remained the leading cause of death for children and teens. In 2024 alone, we lost over 40,000 lives in this epidemic. That's tens of thousands of missing mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, co-workers and friends who should be sitting around the dinner table with their family or driving their kid to soccer practice or studying for final exams. We must continue to honor their memories with action. That's why I am leading the fight for safer communities in Congress. As chairman of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, I continue to work with colleagues from across our country to enact sensible policies and keep us safe. Our bipartisan Safer Communities Act marked the most significant gun violence prevention legislation passed in 30 years. But BSCA closed the boyfriend loophole by adding convicted domestic violence abusers and dating relationships to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, created penalties for federal straw purchasing and gun trafficking, required reviews of juvenile and mental health records for buyers under 21 years old, and cracked down on criminals who try and evade licensing requirements, all while increasing funding for community violence prevention initiatives, red flag laws, mental health services, and school safety. Yet there's still work left to do. The new administration recently disbanded the first ever Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and there will be more roadblocks ahead. While gun violence remains an epidemic in our country, we will keep fighting together to keep our communities safe. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Lorrie Weeks, and I'm here tonight to talk about gun violence in Napa. Years ago, a friend of mine in Napa was shot in a random act of violence. It was frightening and impossible to understand, and more than anything, senseless. There's probably no one in this room who hasn't been touched in some way by gun violence. In the last year, there have been several incidences in Napa of persons being shot and killed by people with guns. My heart goes out to the families and friends of these victims. I wish I could say that Napa had no gun violence, but that just isn't our current reality. And tonight we'd like to have people on the panel talk about precautions, procedures, and ways we in the community can stay informed. Our questions are, has there been an increase in gun possessions and use in our community? Police procedures for gun violence, have these procedures changed in the last 4 years? How is gun violence handled in schools? If an active shooter situation occurred on a school campus, is there a plan? How are guns tracked? Is it state, county, or city registration? We'd like our Chief of Police, Jennifer Gonzales, to begin and address the following.
Okay, well, thank you. Everyone can hear me okay? All right, thank you for being here. We appreciate the invite. Thank you for the hospitality and for letting me Beta first. Thank you. Beta's the pup that's walking around getting cuddles from all of you. We appreciate that. It's amazing what animals can do in our lives. And it's also amazing what good humans can do in our lives. And so thank you for being the good humans and for being part of our community and part of our public safety plan. I will start by saying there were a lot of questions. I don't know that I'm going to have them. I don't have them written down, so I'm going to just muscle through some of it. You might have to re-guide me. But part of our safety plan is all of you. And you've heard the saying, see something, say something. I will leave a police department phone number just to save time. I won't pause and have you pull out your phones and add it to your phone yet. But often when I go to community meetings, I will make sure that each of you have the phone number for dispatch. Because if you see something, we do want to know about it. We dispatch. Our communication center handles the emergency and non-emergency contact information for the City of Napa Police Department, the City of Napa Fire Department, Napa County Sheriff's Office, the City of American Canyon Police Department, the City of American Canyon Fire Department, and the AMR Medical Services. So if you needed any services from any of those organizations, it's one phone number, and you can, we'll make sure you have it for your phones. But if you did see something, if you had somebody that was in need of an emergency service of any sort, medical, fire, or EMS, it's all one spot. And you really are a significant part of our plan for multiple reasons. One is, if you do see something, you'll more than likely call and ask for help. Two is you'll engage in whatever services you can do by helping. Maybe it's reporting it, maybe it's taking an act of providing CPR or something like that if someone is in distress. The other thing is that you maintain the standards of our community. If you allow things to happen, things that we don't want to see here, like gang violence, theft, things like that we are seeing throughout the nation, if you tolerate it, it just becomes a normal for the community. And so it's really important, your engagement. I appreciate on a rainy day that you will get out of your warm homes and come down here and hang out with us. I don't know that we're the coolest kids on the block, but you're hanging out with us tonight, so thank you. The other thing is you vote, and you vote, your vote matters. And so it's really important that you do the research before you vote, and you don't just say, that's a cool title, I believe in the title, but you actually read the words behind the titles and make sure that things are, your values are represented. So thank you all for being part of our public safety plan. Related to gun violence, it's a concern. It's a concern for chiefs of police throughout the nation, for police officers throughout our nation. Unfortunately, we have this cool thing called the World Wide Web. It helps with the speed of communication. It also helps with the speed of misinformation. And you're going to hear me say that a lot tonight. Please fact check things before you assume it's true because you heard it on Facebook, on Nextdoor, on anything of that sort. It might be misinformation that's creating hysteria. And hysteria becomes part of our public safety concerns. Because misinformation, things that we cannot validate through the resources that we have here and other resources in public safety, misinformation creates problems in our community. It creates the belief that we are not safe, and then fear. And fear is a major trigger. It's a real thing for a lot of people. They are fearful of their safety. They are fearful of their freedom. And with that comes their fears of everything being taken away, even though that's not what we have said. So please fact check. And if you have questions, you now have 3 new friends you can call. So we have lots of resources in our community to help you fact check. We have lots of community service groups that are out there that we've had regular contact with to make sure that people understand what the truth is. Now let's talk facts. This last year, 2024, the Napa Police Department responded to almost 56,000 calls for service. That's a lot for a little town. But not all of them were crimes, so that's the good news, right? In fact, during the storm, my fun fact is someone called the police department this last storm because it was too windy and raining for them to walk their dog, and I think they were trying to get some information about the weather. We get a lot of interesting calls, right? Sometimes people confuse 411 with 911, and so we get some interesting calls. But the actual calls for service where people needed some sort of service, there were about 56,000 of them. About 10,000 of those were initiated by our staff. So officers that you see out in the black and white police cars, they might be in your schools, they might be in a variety of different assignments. They initiated the call. There were about 10,000 of those. We conducted about 5,000 traffic enforcement stops. Traffic is one of our major complaints in our community. As you know, especially those of you that are multi-generation Napans, you know that the roads are the same roads we've always had. The number of cars and the number of users have increased over time. So we have a lot of traffic complaints. With that comes traffic enforcement demands. So our officers have been out there doing traffic enforcement, vehicle and pedestrian checks where they will stop and check on people, suspicious cases. We've taken about 5,000 crime reports. Our statistics when it comes to how we report to the nation and through the state, we used to report if we had major crimes, we had specific categories that the FBI would collect the information. And they have changed the way we report that information. So it used to be, back in the day, let's say we had a case where there was a felony-related fight that led to a stabbing, that led to a variety of other types of felony crimes. That would go to a single report to the federal government to let them know about the crime in Napa. Now they want the information on each type of crime per incident. So now that same felony fight battery that turned into a stabbing separate case that maybe somebody also ran across the street and then they ran them over with a vehicle, which just sounds like a horrible scenario. But that would be 3 crime reports now getting reported for that same incident a couple of years ago that we would have reported just a single incident. So our numbers look like they're going to skyrocket until we get enough years of this new reporting system. I caution you because, again, it's about facts, right? When you say crime has skyrocketed in Napa, look at the years, the data from one year to the next year. That information might be different how we report things. So that's what I want to make sure that I give you as much information as you can that you want. When it comes to crime, I want to make sure that you're informed, but at the same time, I don't want to create a paranoia. It's awareness, not fear, right? So we did have 5 suspected hate crime incidents. We've taken several information reports. We've made about 1,700 arrests, and we seized about 42 firearms in our community. And then warrant arrests, meaning someone was arrested or went through the court process, failed to appear, or had some issue within their court process or judicial system, then led to an arrest warrant. We had about 408 of those this last year. So when we start talking about gun violence, we had an anomaly this last year in that we had 2 unrelated double murders. Both of those incidents had guns, or involved guns, and we had other incidents that led to the death of others in a criminal manner, which resulted in either attempted homicides or homicides. We had a total of 6. That is not normal for us. But again, if we go down to the number of incidents, unfortunately, because both those homicide cases had 2 people involved in each case, that's 4 incidents. So while that is a horrible number and not one that represents our values in our community, it is not abnormal for us to have homicides 1 to 2 every couple of years. We are very blessed and fortunate to be in a community where safety is a priority, and we don't have regular violence like we see in other places in the nation, and some other places not too far. So. What other questions? I'm trying to stay on your track, but I also don't want to forget your actual questions. School safety, I think you were going to talk, and I don't know if you want Mr. Donaldson or me to
We
handle
just
that.
want you to do the gun violence for now.
Understood?
So you're the police on campus.
Police on campus. We have an amazing crew of officers that are part of your schools. I've been in public safety and policing for 32 years now, and there have been different eras of police officers on campus, different mindsets. So in a different community where I started my career, we struggled to get officers onto campuses because the perception was, I don't want my child around cops with guns. Then there was changes in school violence that led to, I can't believe we don't have enough cops at the schools, which is cool, right? I have been a school resource officer, an officer on campus, and it is probably one of the most rewarding jobs in the profession because we get to work with the kids that are our future. We get to help build some of the foundation and help with some of the decision making and guide them to professions that maybe they wouldn't consider through their normal academic track. So our officers on campus do more than just enforce the law. And in fact, if we look at the term law enforcement, it's probably the minority of what we actually do, as you heard from my stats, right? We had 5,000 traffic stops this last year. That's us enforcing the law. But at the same time, we had a gazillion other contacts with the community members. The officers spend most of their day helping guide kids making good decisions, giving them suggestions, playing volleyball or whatever they're doing to connect with the kids, giving them coaching lessons, teaching them how to tie a tie, how to give a good firm handshake, how to make eye contact, how to project their voice for job interviews. All of that is not enforcing laws, but it's interacting with the kids. And it's a valuable position for us to have officers on the campus. And they're helping kids make better decisions when it comes to interacting with their parents. Maybe choosing to or not use drugs, not use alcohol. find ways to give them resources when they're experiencing homelessness. There's a lot of things that our officers are doing on the campuses. They are also there to train staff for emergency responses. So if there's a critical incident on the campus, working with the school districts on how to have a safe response, how to lock down campuses, how to keep the kids safe, even if the crisis isn't on campus, but it's nearby a campus. And so making sure that the staff are prepared for an emergency response, teaching the kids how to be safe. I think a lot of people understand the DARE program that has evolved out of schools, but they're still there to provide guidance. Does that help?
Maybe police procedures. Have they changed since 2020?
Thank you. Police procedures have not changed. And we are, we have active shooter training. Well, I'll say they changed maybe after the Columbine incident. So, that's now 2 decades ago, right? There was a time when everybody would lock down a scene and wait for SWAT to respond. Now what we have is all of our officers are trained as emergency responders. They have all been given additional police gear. That gear, the laws have changed in how we report that gear. We now go to City Council for permission to have the emergency gear that we need to respond to those cases, with hope that we never have to use them. That's a 8481 is the law that changed the Assembly bill. But our officers now do active shooter training regularly so that they are prepared to make entry and run to gun violence as opposed to freezing the scene and waiting for a tactical team. We also have SWAT teams. We have people that have advanced training on responding to those types of things. We also deploy resources like that at public events. So when we have large scale events, maybe Bottle Rock or other events that are larger scale, lots of people, we put additional resources. You may or may not know they're there. They might be in civilian clothing, they might be in uniform, they might be in the SWAT gear, which is usually green. So you might see them with additional resources. That doesn't mean we're there wanting to use them, it means that we're there so that we can. You might also see an armored vehicle out. That is different than years past. We have big vehicles that have armor plating so we can get closer to the scene and keep the staff safe so that they can still be effective at the scene.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do either of you want to talk about, do we have active shooter drills in our school district for our kids?
Yeah, every school site in California is required to have a safety plan in place that is typically put together with the help of public safety officials or members. And these plans include active shooter type scenarios, fire drills, that kind of thing. And staff is trained in those areas at every school in California. So, and that safety plan includes, harassment, what to do with the shooter, what to do with something that's, out of the norm in schools, and it's pretty much covered in that safety plan. They're very extensive.
How do we keep guns, knives, weapons off of campuses?
Well, Chief, said it best: if you see something, say something, and that's what we tell our kids. And fortunately, it's a very rare occurrence when that happens. That's why it's very important for there to be officers at our schools, and they really build good relationships with the kids, and the kids really like them. The staff really appreciate them being there. I know my experience a while back, I was a police chief in Napa, and we had a school resource officer that was off that day, one day, and they had a call at the school that I responded to, and all I heard was, you can't let our officer off. They just value them so much, and they do such a good job, and the kids like them. And they really are, I think, a big part of keeping guns off campus.
Well, add to that question is safe storage. So for those that aren't gun owners, be safe, be responsible, make sure it's safely locked away where you children can't get to it, that you know how to handle it safely, when to use it, not to leave it out unsupervised, because a lot of accidents happen in the household with children. And children, if they do have access to it, they might want to take it and show off. So we want to make sure that in addition to a safe school, safe community, it starts also at home, being responsible gun owners when you do own a gun, and make sure that you know how to keep it safe along the way.
And I did remind you that we do, as part of a package that we give to parents every year, include that, keeping guns safe.
If anybody had any question cards, if you hold them up, there'll be somebody will come around and get them for you. So good evening, my name is Connie Warren. I've lived in this community for 36 years, and I call this valley my home. At a quick glance, Napa might appear to be mostly white, but we are not. We are a diverse community of nationalities, faiths, and creeds. Our development is formed by waves of immigrants and historic events, and the city of Napa has minorities that are Hispanic, Latino, Asian, the indigenous Waco Indians, LGBTQ, just to name a few of them. Our elected officials in a democracy represent all persons living in our city and are responsible for public safety. In the past, hate groups have distributed anti-Semitic and anti-gay materials. What resources are there to support and protect our Jewish and LGBTQ communities? In the current political climate, many are being targeted or experiencing anxiety and fear for real and localized threats. How are each of your departments preparing for the oncoming ICE and Border Patrol activities? What are the realities, rights, and resources available to Napa citizens? Public education is our shared common knowledge, how we understand our country, and our greatest tool to combat racism. Other states have restrictions on discussions of race and gender and ban books by and about Black and LGBTQ persons. Discussions on race and gender equip students to process our world. Without a quality education, students cannot understand the depths of racism where it is present in our culture, and they miss the opportunity to learn about historic oppression and push for justice. Is our education in Napa honest, historically correct? Does it celebrate contributions of all groups, explain the American experience from a variety of viewpoints, or is it sanitized and cherry-picked? I would like each speaker to discuss their relationships and interactions with our minority groups. I'm asking Councilman Narvaez to go first. It would be helpful to our discussion tonight if you could explain sanctuary. Why is California a sanctuary state and Napa a sanctuary county, and yet we are not a sanctuary city? So what is the importance of sanctuary?
Thank you very much, first of all, for allowing me to be here and joining this conversation, and for all of you to take time to be here today. I've gotten a lot of people reach out to me ever since the election. There's a lot of fear going on among our diverse community, mainly with our Latino community, the Latinx community, and the undocumented community, about what their life is going to be like under this next administration. So one of the things that I've done along with Chief Gonzales and other leaders in the community was meet with different groups. I'm also president of the Napa County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We helped the Latino leaders roundtable where we discussed the Know Your Rights. We discussed what the city, county, and state does versus federal agencies. There's a lot of big differences. The city of Napa is not a sanctuary city, the county is not a sanctuary city, but California very much is a sanctuary state in the way that there's the Truth Act and there's the Trust Act. What that means is the limited cooperation with federal agencies. The city of Napa does not cooperate with ICE, does not cooperate with the federal agencies in a way where we share and assist immigration enforcement. That's very important because our jurisdictions are very different. And the main thing that I want to say is, and the most important is trust. trust with our law enforcement, trust with the leaders in the community when we reach out and provide services to everybody in the community. Sometimes it's challenging with our undocumented community because there's a lot of fear. Sometimes when you see a badge, you think that's everything from the federal agencies all the way down. But we put in a lot of work to make sure that they understand the key difference. When you see the Napa badge, that you can trust them, that they're not going to ask for papers, they're not going to ask, hey, are you here legally? Are you documented? They're not going to ask that. They're going to make sure that you get the services that you need. If you're in danger, if there's a medical emergency, if you're a victim, we want to make sure that you get those services. So part of what we've done in the last several months is we're continuing to work with some of the nonprofits, like Puertas Abiertas. That's really where the work is at, is getting out to where the community is. I've had employers reach out to me because their employees are afraid to go to work. So I've gone to restaurants, in the kitchens, and different areas, different workplaces to say, this is why Napa is a safe place, regardless if you're documented or undocumented. And I do want to talk about some of those phrases also, because you hear illegals, you hear documented, you hear a lot of different phrases. Some of them are very offensive. But what I'll say is what I've learned as I'm looking at the website, the White House, and the executive orders, and all these things that we start seeing in social media and how that's being communicated at the local level, is that, somebody that's here that doesn't have citizenship, a lot of people are talking about they're criminals, arrest them, deport them, but really what I found is it's a civil offense. It's not a crime that you should be arrested and put in jail. If somebody overstays their visa, from what I understand, it's a civil offense, no different than speeding. Right? That's how it is right now. But the rhetoric coming from the White House is that they're all criminals, right? We're gonna look at the offenders, but if you're also here illegally, you're gonna go with them. And that's a very dangerous, message to our communities, because what it does is we have to go out there and calm people down and say, we're not going to do this. We're not going to run anybody up. And those are actual phrases that I hear in the community that we're really trying to empower people to know their rights, to understand the difference between local law enforcement and federal agencies. I know that many of us use social media. A lot of members of the Latino community, they'll use Facebook, but they use WhatsApp also to really communicate. There's a lot of what I'll say rumors in the last several weeks about ISIS here. People don't want to leave the house. People don't want to get medication. They don't want to go to school. I mean, it gets really worrisome when there is rumors. We want to make sure that we fact check. That's why, I've gone to different places. I'm with you going to churches, workplaces. I'll be going to the high schools the next couple of weeks to talk to a lot of the students. We have a large demographic of students that come from undocumented households, come from mixed status households. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 5. And I come from a mixed status household. My brother did not get his citizenship before he passed. So I remember what that feeling is like. That fear is very real. And also growing up, I remember what it was like, the fear of law enforcement, when you have a member in your family that's not documented. So I'm very, very appreciative of our law enforcement and that relationship that we developed to know, hey, I can trust that person. I'm not going to worry about my family being separated and losing the family unity. Sanctuary cities comes up once in a while. It's come up often. I know members of the audience have talked about let's be a sanctuary city. The conflict I have with that is that in practice, we're already doing what we need to do to protect our document. We don't share. We build trust. We work with different nonprofits to make sure that they know their rights. Rapid Response System, the Rapid Response Network. It's a really good group where we have volunteers that come to the training, train the trainer. I know who they are. I know what the subjects are. And it's about building trust, being in front of people, and knowing that the leaders have your back. right? That's what's my concern with labeling us as a centrist city is putting a target. I mean, I don't want us to be on Twitter with the president saying, look at Napa, look what they're doing. I don't want to draw that kind of tension, because really where the work is building those relationships and that trust. I want to make sure that if somebody, whatever their status is, they can come to a council meeting and talk to us, right? And we do provide translation. If we know that we're going to have Spanish speakers or another language, we find a translator. I mean, I translated before, but we do have that service available, and we're improving our system to have better communication. That's part of our focus area in this last workshop with the council is civic engagement, to make sure that we improve the base of communication with our community. You know, and we also, there was some questions about LGBTQ, Jewish people. We've had, you know, anti-Semitic rhetoric in the last several months and this last year. And what I've seen is this community, when we come together, the one community, we come together and have each other's back. That's one of the best things you can do. Because when somebody wants to come in and spread fear and wants to dismantle such a peaceful community, we come together, you can't. It's really hard to do that. Right? When you have these marches of peace and love to combat hate, that's one of the best things that we can do. We have policies in place to protect people. We have our training at the city level with diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity to make sure our staff is aware. I've gone to Seattle, to Kings County, along with other members of Napa County, to see how they work with their DEI and some of that training to expand on that here and make sure that we're being welcoming to all people from all walks of life and part of our community, you know, to have those values of freedom and being free of who you are without that kind of hate. But really, the one thing I'd like to say is, you know, there's a lot of diversity in this community. There's a lot of groups you can participate with. If you want to expand your circle, if you feel you want to understand other cultures, you know, don't be scared to go out there and be part of different groups and expand your circle of friends, because you're going to find, you know, something fun in those cultures, with music, with food, with just friendship. And there is a lot of volunteer opportunities. You may have some fun with all that. And any other questions? You know, community resources, we have a very strong network of nonprofits and coalition nonprofits that provide different services. Everything from victims of domestic violence to youth and LGBTQ, and we're very fortunate to have that. And, you know, there is a lot of resources. And I meet with different leaders from different groups on a regular basis to make sure I understand what's going on. And, you know, what I would say is pick the topic that you're interested in, get involved and help out, and you'll learn where some of the needs are, especially with our youth. Our youth, you know, after COVID and there's so much going on in the last several years compared to when I was in high school. I feel that there's a lot of overwhelming activity going on that oftentimes, you know, mentoring, being there for youth and supporting is really important. And there's youth services all over town, so I would say, you know, do a little homework and what's available and volunteer, because I know all of you care. You're here because you care, and I see there's a lot here, so, you know, I would challenge you to get involved with some of the groups that you may not be involved in the past.
Yeah, from an educational standpoint, in the schools in Napa, we do not ask or require information about somebody's immigration status. We are here to educate all kids in the county. We have, I know that Napa Unified School District and the Napa County Board of Education put out letters to parents advising them that, and it's supported by state law, that if ICE does show up at school, which me personally don't think will happen, I'd be very surprised if it were to happen. But if that were the case, they do not have a right to come on campus unless they have some type of order from a judge. we were trying to reassure those parents in the schools that their kids are safe in school. And just an interesting fact, most of our kids in school, almost 59%, are Hispanic or Latin descent. So they are, we need them in school. It's very important for our community. We are a very diverse and inclusive community, and we want to keep it that way. It makes our community stronger, and our schools reflect that by celebrating, the different diverse members of the schools. As far as studies going, if we water down historic studies, we have ethnic studies in high schools now. And those really focus on African American culture, Hispanic, Asian, and Native American, and Asian Pacific Islander.
What about women?
Well, they're not a minority. And they're not anyway, I think that is probably taught about daily in schools. So these classes are to really focus on things that you learn. All of us probably didn't learn in a history class or a class at school. As far, we weren't told that, in order to make Dodger Stadium, build Dodger Stadium, they took, homes from Mexican Americans. So those kinds of things are now brought to light in ethnic studies. And I think this is the first year where it's being piloted, and I'm sure those classes are going to develop and change to really meet the needs of the community and educate our kids with proper education.
Plus, we know girls roll, right? Boys roll. That's what we learned at school. From a law enforcement standpoint, and I am here to represent all of the law enforcement in Napa Valley. What you will find over on the table, I believe, is this paper, both in English and Spanish. It has a list, and it's written and co-authored by all of the law enforcement heads in Napa Valley. So the Sheriff Ortiz, District Attorney Allison Haley, our current acting Chief up in Calistoga, Joelle Gallagher, and the Chief in St. Helena Police Department, Chris Hartley, Diana Jose, who is running the jail facility in Napa County Department of Corrections, the Chief of Probation, Amanda Gibbs, the Chief at the college, Napa Valley College, Chief Amber Wade, and Chief Rick Greenberg of American Canyon. All of us we are acutely aware of the fears and concerns related to immigration enforcement. We are also very aware of the state laws that have been in effect, some of them as far back as 2013, prior to the current administration. So these laws in California that were referred to earlier, again related to SB 54, the Truth Values Act, AB 2792, known as the Truth Act, and 84, known as the Trust Act. All of these laws basically tell what state law enforcement can and cannot do when it comes to interacting with federal law enforcement. Again, ICE or immigration enforcement is related to a federal level. And then as we come down to state level, the state laws have already dictated what we can and cannot do. We do not ask for your immigration status. We do not ask for your papers. If you're driving, we ask for your driver's license to show that you're legally allowed to do things. If you are involved in a crime, wherever you come from, I mean, at a certain point, everyone in the room is an immigrant of some sort, how far back we have to go generationally, that's individual. But we ask if you're involved in a crime, we will roll your fingerprints, we will figure out who you are. That would be for you, that would be for me if I were ever arrested for a crime. It does not have to do with your national status. So we are, constitutionally, we have our state regulations of what we can and cannot do. Now, this is where it differs. If ICE is in town, which again, if you stay off the social media, because you'll get false information of how frequently they're here. But if ICE comes to town and they are involved in a critical incident where they need law enforcement assistance to help calm and get public safety back in order, local police will respond to that as we would if any other agency was in our town asking for help. So, for example, Vacaville Police Department, maybe they come to Napa to serve a search warrant. We're just giving hypotheticals here. If they got involved in a critical incident and they called for help, we're sending our officers as quickly as we can to go and help them keep the peace. If ICE calls for help because they're in an emergency like that, just like Vacaville PD, we will go, we will get to the point where we keep the peace, say they got into a shooting or something, we would go and secure that scene to keep the peace. We are not aiding with the enforcement, the immigration enforcements. That's a different role. So we will go, we will respond to any officer calling for help, and then we will leave. We are not asking them to be our translators. If we needed translation services, we have services. We have staff that can translate in a variety of languages. And then we also have electronic services that we can call and do translation. So we do not use ICE agents for translation services. We are not assisting with our local resources for their enforcement needs. And we are not asking people to verify their status in the U.S. to be a victim of a crime. Again, we do not want people to not call for help. That's a lot of negatives in there, sorry. We want people to call for help regardless of where they are from or what their current legal status is in the United States. If you need fire services, if you need medical services, if you need law enforcement services, we want everyone to feel safe to call us.
I do want to add is I often hear that people are not documented or are taking public benefits and are being a burden on our economy. But one thing that I'll say is that one of the fastest growing small businesses is Latinas women, and the Latinas, also undocumented people, can't start a business. It's funny, it's interesting, not funny, but interesting that you can have an ITIN number, file your income taxes, working in the IRS, there's no problem collecting that. But then another federal government agency is saying, hey, they can't be here, right? So they'll take the money, but then they're trying to kick people out at the same time, which I find very troubling. But I will say that you can have an LLC, you can be a contractor, you can, in California years ago, there's a bill passed to allow professional licenses for people to be undocumented and have a business, to have, everything that another business will have to be a legitimate operating business with the same expenses and overhead as other people. And people that try to undercut that are people from all walks of life. But just because you're undocumented doesn't mean that you're not putting money back into the economy and being part of that economic engine that helps us have a quality of life. And I remember working with one of the nonprofits during COVID when people were out of work. There were people in a workforce that could not get benefits because they couldn't work. Right? They weren't able to collect unemployment benefits. Even though they were paying taxes and put into the system, they weren't able to draw any benefits out. So I was working with, as part of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, with other organizations to help some of the workforce to get some help with rent, help with groceries and other benefits, because they weren't able to draw some of the benefits, even though they were putting money into that. So I just wanted to share that with you, because you hear that often. So next time you hear that, just think about the people who are putting into the pot, but unable to take money out. We have to find other ways to help themselves if something bad happens where they can't work.
I want to remind everyone that feel free to fill out a question or comment card. I'm starting to collect them, and hopefully if we have time at the end of the evening, we can read some of them. If we can't get to them, we will make sure that our speakers get to them and receive your questions.
Hi, my name is Sally Archambault, and thank you everybody for coming tonight. I know I was personally torn, like Thompson's town hall, and the weather was bad, but this is too important. Thank you for being here. I'm presenting our questions and concerns concerns regarding communication. As we all know, communication is the key to public safety, and we obviously need to consider communication through the Napa lens as a multilingual community with a wide income difference, a history of earthquakes and fire, growing anxiety about ICE, and gang and gun violence. Today, digital and print mainstream media is expensive and no longer seems to be the primary source of information. Nixle is inconsistent and social media is not reliable. The one bright spot is for people with children enrolled in the Napa School District. Thank you, Jane. They receive consistent messaging, undoubtedly because the school has everybody's contact information. Nixle seems to be unreliable. An example, the murders that occurred just blocks from here a few months ago were not reported through Nixle. Lorrie, my fellow moderator, lives a block away and received a phone call from a friend asking about the incident, and that's how she found out. The last alert I received from Nixle was last March. I thought I was signed up for Nixle, but I'm worried I'm not, and if I'm not, it's likely that there are a lot of people who are not. The Napa County website refers to alert and iPause systems, and the Napa City website refers to Nixle and Everbridge emergency notification service. You have to sign up for these systems on your mobile phone, and it's not clear which one to sign up for. It's not straightforward to set up profiles, and if you don't have a mobile phone, it seems there's no central place to get critical information. A lot of English-speaking people currently go to Nextdoor, as we all know, or Corey Edwards' Facebook page, which I've never heard of until this. Napa Valley Fire and Police Emergency Information, unofficial. And it does have a lot of information on there, and a lot of people go there for timely information. It's not clear where non-English speakers can access this same type of timely emergency information. English and Spanish speakers can get information at the new, amazing website, NapaValleyTogether.com. Puertas Abiertas and North Bay Organizing Project for a myriad of support and legal services for the Hispanic population. An aside, the North Bay Organizing Project is responsible for the Rapid Response Network, which people can call if they're afraid of ICE or they need help. And it's alive and well. Anyhow, my questions. I submitted this ahead of time, I thought, in no particular order. We are a multilingual city. How does each entity address communication needs of different languages, such as Spanish, Tagalog, Hispanic dialects, Chinese, etc.? Is there a plan for regular public safety announcements in different languages for the community? Online, radio, please. Nixle is inconsistent. When the young woman was murdered, there was no Nixle to the neighbors. Is there a common set of communication tools? Who decides what goes out on a Nixle? Who decides when the Nixle is sent out? And how is information shared among all of you? I'd like to ask, I have my notes here, but I know I'm asking Gina to take this off. Thank you.
Well, as far as the school district goes, they use an application called Parent Square, and they use that to communicate to all the parents. And it is a very good tool. They can send their messages out in whatever language they choose to. They also use Everbridge, which is a free service, and I think Chief Gonzales might talk a little more about that. But it sends out notifications about emergencies, traffic, crime, that kind of thing. And I highly recommend downloading the Everbridge application if you want that information. And also the school district uses social media quite frequently. There's Facebook, Instagram. Typically the athletic teams or clubs will have their own specific Facebook page or Instagram account that is monitored by a coach or a teacher. and they get out great information about what they're doing. So I think that communication within the school district is good. There's always going to be blips occasionally to information being put in can all sometimes be inaccurate. But for the most part, I think they do a really good job. And it's a lot better than it used to be when I was growing up. I don't think kids can get away with too much now because their parents have access to everything they're doing at school pretty much. So
I can vouch for the parent. It's great. I have kids in school and I get a lot of notifications. So my wife and I stay very well informed with what our kids are doing. We want to step permission so that we can hear from them later. The city now, we do have, we translate to Spanish in both documentation and social media. We also, if there's other languages, we will accommodate other languages. So we're very intentional about making sure that our communication is received by all members of our community. We have our social media. You can see it's all translated. We really made an effort to get the information out, even from just the rain last week with some of the flood watch with that. We made sure we had information both in English and Spanish. Also, it's not the city entity, but the radio station just not long ago started a mega mix. It's 1440 AM, and it's a Spanish only radio station. So if you want to learn Spanish, get on 1440, start listening to some music, and if you're not, I would say go lonely. You're gonna really see some of the fun part of the culture that's alive and well in this community. It's something you may not see all the time, but some of you may go to Ottawa. When you go to the next weekend, you'll see a different kind of energy and fun that celebrates a different culture. It's very beautiful. But I'll say that Nixle, you can go online, but you can also text. And there you can text in Spanish to activate Nixle alert in Spanish as well. So, and believe in other languages too. But we make sure that that's available to the community. A large number of our community members are Spanish speakers versus English speakers. So we make sure that we are including that demographic. For me personally, it's really important because English is my second language, and I understand when people that are starting learning older, it's a little harder, and you'll see generational challenges with communication. And oftentimes, the standard was having that your grandkid or your child translating for you, right? And just that was kind of like a little more practice. But we can't accept that anymore. We have to be very intentional with making sure that the information that we put out is in different languages. Not just that, but again, it backs up timely, getting out accurately, and continue to build that trust in our community.
Out of curiosity, how many of you had an AOL account back in the day? Can you keep your hands up? How many of you still use the AOL account? A couple of you. Okay. So in government, we have, we're often kind of behind when it comes to technology. But what we see is what used to be popular, we might not maintain that contract with that company or that resource. And so over time, the companies or the technology changes. With that change comes new programs for people to sign up for. So back in the day, we had Nixle. Nixle got bought out. There's a few proprietary things. It is now called Everbridge.
It's still on the website though.
But that's the problem, is catching up some of the information. And that's, and so, and then the other thing is we have the habit of calling it Nixle. Why? Because we're, it's a creature of habit. I call these tissues, right? But then some people call them Kleenex because you were raised with the brand. But this one is called Performed by Cascade. If I said Kleenex, everyone would know what we're talking about. Unfortunately, we start to talk about Nixle and then we use it as part of our vocabulary and it gets left on websites and things like that. So there's some confusion. Modern day, it's Everbridge. To sign up for Everbridge, Text your zip code to 888-777. This information is over on the table, so you can get this later, don't panic. We will get you on it. If you want to be on it, we will get you on it, okay? It is important to be informed. That is what tonight's all about. I think you're seeing a common theme. My love for next door is don't sign up for that, sign up for Everbridge. And Corey, I love Corey as well. I too am a fan of Corey. However, I will tell you that through technology and through changes, we are moving to encrypted radio channels. Corey listens to all of our police radio communications. When we move to an encrypted system, he will not have, just like you will not have, the ability to listen to our radio channels. Back in the day, some of you may have an app, 50 Radio, or a variety of online apps where you can listen to what's going on in police and fire worlds. As we move to encryption, and that encryption is for your safety, I'll get to that. As we move to those systems, you will no longer be able to use those apps to listen to what's going on. Corey listens to those apps. His group, he's got a group of people that help him. They provide real-time what's going on. They will lose that ability over time because of the technological advances. Some of those advances are because when I am talking to my dispatcher, using a radio to talk to my dispatcher, let's say on a traffic stop, I'm going to get your driver's license, I'm going to read it over the radio, and anybody and everybody can listen to it. You probably don't want them all to have that information. And so if there is a crime victim and they're giving us the name and ways to contact the crime victim, you don't want that over the radio. But that's how we communicate with each other. So we have to use the radio. So what we found is through the wizards and the IT people, they've created encrypted systems where only those that have the special key can listen to the radio information. What happens is people like Corey Edwards that like to keep the community up to date, they won't be able to continue to play. So it will be restricted to public safety personnel and a need to know. Now I get into need to know and want to know. Society has taught us to all be part of TMZ, and we all want to know what's going on, and it's super exciting, and news gets sensationalized. Unfortunately, those of you who have been crime victims may also realize your very traumatic incident is now your neighbors want to know. This is where some of the decision makers have to come in and decide what gets released and what does not get released. One of your questions was about NIPSL notifications or Everbridge notifications of the homicide. That was actually my decision. And the reason why I did not put that out on a county-wide NIPSL was because we had 2 juveniles who were killed on a very small street in a town that is not traveled very regularly. I purposely did not push that out to a county-wide want to know. We kept it to a need to know and blocked the roadway for the residents and gave them access and gave them updates as they needed it. Then we took our Facebook page and our website, the City of Napa website, and we uploaded a press release with just facts. So that when the community needed to know information, we gave you just facts, not assumptions. Because at the time there was a lot of unknown. It was a very fluid incident, as you can imagine. And we had people showing up on the crime scene that were taking us away from actually investigating who did it and trying to find the person. And instead we had to babysit crowds. And so the fewer people to show up, the better for our community, because then we could focus on the actual crime and finding the offender. So what we did instead was provided need-to-know information in a press release. We reached out to our neighboring law enforcement agencies for help to help us with the crime, and then we found the shooter, who was an unknown person at the time. And all we had was a description of somebody's race and the color of a vehicle. That's all we had to go on at the beginning of that. And within 48 hours, we had the people in custody. But it's, again, we have to prioritize and we have to decide what information gets pushed out and how. So, my apologies if you feel that you needed to know that information, and if you lived in that area and you didn't get the information, we tried to go door to door to those that were immediately impacted. We did it for 2 reasons. One was to make sure they understood they were safe. The other thing is we didn't know if they were witnesses. And again, we were trying to find somebody based on a single race description and the color of a vehicle. So we went door to door, literally canvassing the neighborhood to see if anybody saw anything, if they had surveillance video, Could we see the video? Would it help in our case? So there's a lot to unpack there, and I apologize for speed reading all of that, but that is what we do. Nixle, formerly Nixle, now Everbridge, might become something else later when the county does a new request for proposals and we have a new contract with a new company. But for right now, we have Everbridge. For right now, I ask that you go after this over to the table and get the information and sign up if you're not already signed up. It's options, and that information's over there as well. The other thing is I ask that you join our Facebook page and our Instagram page, because really we need friends, and that's how we share information. So we want you to be our friend. We want you to have the latest and greatest. If we're doing traffic DUI enforcements, we'll put it out there. If there's information that is good information for you to know about safety, we'll put safety tips out there. If we're doing fun things in the community and we want you to come play, like National Night Out and things like that, Know Your Limits, which is where we educate you on your alcohol consumption and what it does to your driving and your mechanical skills. If you want to participate in any of the public meetings that we host, all of that is often pushed out on our social media or on our city website. So those are some areas where you can get the information. The county and the city have separate groups because we have separate enforcement areas. So the city of Napa is just the jurisdiction within the town, the city itself of Napa. The county of Napa provides services throughout the entire county in the rural areas or in the contract cities like American Canyon and Town of Yountville. The city of St. Helena will provide information for just their town, same for Calistoga. So that's why there's so many different Everbridge groups, is because we have different jurisdictional responsibilities. Much like we have a city council member here, we have a board of supervisors here. And so, again, representing the county, representing the city, representing the district attorney's office. We have different groups, and so we each have our own form of communication, but we do talk amongst each other so that we streamline and we make it as consistent as we can for our community, because it is confusing. Thank you.
Also, I want to make sure city managers, Steve Hart is back there. We work very close together. My colleague, MaryLee Sheffer, she's the current vice mayor. I was vice mayor last year, now she's the vice mayor, so we work very well together. Very blessed to have a good team that understands the values of the city, the things that we want to get done along with the board of supervisors. So I'm taking a mental picture here. So I want to invite everybody to come to the council meeting and see us in action and how we run those meetings and how we vote on things that affect the community. So it's just another, in addition to just watching social media, following social media, come to city council meetings. Sometimes it's exciting, sometimes a little more, dollars and cents, but I always welcome somebody to come in, and if you have an issue or good news to share, you have public comment, you can talk about anything for a few minutes, and then, or a topic that you may be interested in, you go see the Napa website, download the agenda, the first and third Tuesday of the month, we meet. We'll be adopting a new budget this summer for the next 2 years that follows the focus areas that we want to invest a lot of resources in to improve a lot of things that are needed in the community. So I welcome everybody to join us.
So I am collecting some question cards, and timing-wise, we do have time for some if you have a particular question or comment. I'm going to start by reading a couple of them right now. One of them is, what are the police procedures if someone is having a mental health crisis? Are those calls responded to by police officers, or are there mental health professionals who responds as well?
Yes, and it depends. No, I'm just kidding. So mental health is an actual thing that has evolved over the last several years. There was a case, I want to say maybe 2014, somewhere 14, 15. She had a case in San Francisco where unfortunately an individual was in crisis. An officer engaged with that person. It led to a shooting, and that changed a lot of how we look at responding police officers to cases where individuals are in crisis. The The reality is, when someone is in need of help, the normal thing that we have all been taught is to call 911. Often, when there is not a system in place, those that respond either become the police or fire as the first responders. Over time in our community, we have seen the need to change that, where the officer doesn't need to be the first person to respond to someone in crisis. And we may not be the best trained, but we are the ones working. And so we often are the ones that respond to that. In Napa County, we're quite lucky because we now have a mobile response team that will help, and it's a group of trained professionals that is their primary and sole function, is to help those that are in mental health crisis. They can get them resources, they can get them guidance, they can get them medical attention without engaging policing. So it's a yes and maybe, and it depends, right? Because it depends on how the call comes in. If the call comes in and the mobile crisis response team is available and they're not tied up with another call, then they may be the first and they may be the only that respond. We might send fire personnel, but not police personnel, if there's a medical involved that it's not rising to the level of needing police personnel there. We might send, paramedic, fire kind of combined often. So, but it may be a case where someone is armed with a weapon or other persons their safety is threatened. If that is the case, then police may also respond, and we may be the first ones assigned to the call. It just really depends on the information that comes into dispatch or the way it's routed. If you call directly to the mobile response team and you don't notify us, we may not know that they're even responding to the call. So it's a partnership that we are trying to work out our kinks in communication. That's the common theme, because there are so many people and there are so many different systems that are there to help. But we want to make sure that we're not duplicating those efforts and we're sending the right resource at the time.
Thank you. Regardless of the status of the city, I think this is regarding the status of the city as far as when we were talking about sanctuary city. How can Napa City leaders be more aggressive in their messaging and education to the anti-immigrant, pro-deportation contingencies in Napa? For example, most undocumented people here, through legal channels and awaiting their date in court, yes, immigrants are constantly framed in local, I'm not trying to read their
I
hand.
can just say it, it's my question.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay, I'll follow the rules. Yeah, I'm curious about what responsibility leadership has towards framing the discourse, particularly the public education aspect of it that you guys have talked so much about, given the communities in the North Bay that are very anti-immigrant, racist, white supremacists, who like to frame this as a question exclusively of legality, when it's clear that they don't even understand the immigration process, and that many people who come here have followed the correct legal channels, are still undocumented, and were or are waiting their day in court. I ask this question with sensitivity to the fact that our current administration is also changing people's status or trying to by the day, and it seems like part of this question of messaging is about public education and leadership from you about the facts of the immigration process.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you for that question. So a couple things there. As a local leader, one thing is being in the forefront of the community to build trust and be there to answer questions. As I mentioned earlier, to have trust with local law enforcement, because the one thing I want to make sure, if you need medical emergency services, you're not afraid to call. Because we want to make sure people, regardless of where you come from, will have those services. Two is to go where the people are, and that's what myself and other members of leadership have done, is to, through friends and through trusted networks, I hear, hey, there's a group here, there's a family, there's workers that are worried, they don't want to leave the house. I go there and talk to them about what the facts are, right? There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of achievement. A lot of achievement is, is bad information, right? What's going on? I get text messages and pictures of ISIS in the community, and I verify, as much as I can. There's things that I can share when I have information. There's other things that it's not shared with us. But the thing is to let them know, it's a safe community. Now, as far as the legal part of that, we have nonprofit organizations that provide legal assistance. We want to make sure that we have the network in place to have safe referrals to those organizations. One of the things that we have on a monthly basis is the Latino Leaders Luncheon. We ask leaders from all over the county to come together to share the right information so they can go and share that among their groups that they serve, that they supervise, that they work with as trusted leaders to be on the same page and share the same information. The work is out in the community, right? At the council, we have a lot of technical work and policies and budgets to discuss, and we have proclamations, but the work is out in the community, boots on the ground, meeting people where they are, and having those conversations to make sure that we can disengage with that misinformation and also stay up to date. I mean, I watch those press conferences. I want to know what they're saying so I can share the right information compared to what we do at the local level. So continue to do the work and build trust is number one.
I'd like to just add on that. I think that's a good question, but I don't think our city leaders are going to fix the problem and the root problem. And I think that we can all kind of look at the immigration system as flawed as far as letting people into our country that want to be here and be productive and stay here, and they're here to make a better life, and that's what our country's all about. It has to be handled by the Republicans and Democrats, and they have to finally work together to fix the problem. And it's our voices here that make a difference. It can make those demands. Leadership helps with lobbying and that kind of thing, but really it's all your voices and being heard and, letting them know. So that's my 2 cents. And that's not, well.
And if I haven't mentioned my love for next door, that'd be great, because I will say this week, we had another incident where somebody said ICE was in Napa. And we've had claims that they were at Walmart, that they were at, other big box stores, things like that. The sheriff and I were talking about this recently because we get calls, your leaders get calls, and regularly it's a panic because they saw it on a social media platform that you might be familiar with, that you might share some false information. And again, the fear is real. Right? It's just the facts that are not accurate. And so the sheriff discovered that there were a couple times where he was getting panicked phone calls that ICE was in Napa and that they were at a specific location. And then when he got home, he was watching telenovela and realized, or not telenovela, thank you. And he was saying that, yes, they were at a Walmart, but it was in another state. And unfortunately, the scale of economy, right, that all Walmarts look the same because it's faster to build them that way. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, they were at a Walmart, but it wasn't in Napa, it was in another state. So what he's finding is that often somebody's seeing something on the national news, and then the misinformation gets out through social media, text, and again, because of fear, it's validated instantly. It wasn't factual. So, yes, ma'am.
I'd like to be a cheerleader for the Rapid Response Network. If you call that number, I was in that team, I still am an observer. But if you call that and say, I think ICE is there, people get called to go to that spot and see if they can find them to try to validate the information. So that's really a great tool. Anyhow, I'd like to be a cheerleader for that. It helps.
What I will add is, if you join a conversation and you're not sure if it's factual, please don't let it grow, right? You can challenge and say, hey, I don't think that's accurate. Here's where you can go for accurate information. Because sometimes people will piggyback off each other and misinformation starts piling on and it starts appearing as facts. So, it's also our responsibility to call it out, say, hey, I don't think that's true. And here's the facts. So we're all in this together so we can all do our part.
So, I don't want to assume the context of this question, but someone was wondering if the Napa Valley Unified School District, or maybe even the county of Napa, has seen a drop in daily attendance due to recent events.
I don't think they've seen a drop in attendance except for the other day they stayed out for a protest, which they can be excused for doing political protests as long as their parents give them permission.
So that was Monday. That was a day without an immigrant. I closed my office. My kids stayed home. My wife closed. She has a home daycare. She closed, and I did do a video on my platform just sharing what it means to do this. I did get a good response from people that weren't familiar with it and other people that felt empowered by it, and just asked them to share, because as I mentioned before, the economic engine of our diverse communities does have an impact when you really go after a group that you should really leave alone, that just want to live the American dream, right? So that was a day to show that there's a segment of community that belongs here, that contribute, that one wants to be your neighbor and be your customer, be that local vendor, or be your employee, right, or your kid's friend at school. We're all connected, so that was a way to send that message, and that was really throughout many communities across the U.S. You may even see some marches later that they're organizing peaceful marches just to share, hey, we're here, we love this country, we're part of this country, right? We may look different than you, but we're not very different, right? So those are some of the things that happen. And I know that I saw from Parent Square that kids, that just for parents to say they miss school due to political action, which I found very, very refreshing, because we've done, when I was younger, when that was the case, they say don't leave school, right? You're not allowed to leave school. And here the conversations change. And that changes when people speak out and they're supportive of each other to make sure we continue to make that positive impact.
Okay, this question is in terms of cooperating with ICE. If you arrest someone in Napa and you fingerprint them, doesn't that fingerprint information get shared with ICE?
So I don't run the jails, but no, the state laws still prohibit, again, our participation. So the time that there will be participation with ICE is, again, if they call for an emergency and we go to help them calm the scene. But then the other time will be there are very limited exceptions in the law, the state law, that talk about when somebody is already convicted of a violent felony, have been deported, are back and committing another violent crime. So there are very limited times in the actual law, the laws that I cited earlier, and that information is again available over there, that we can or would actually notify ICE. Other than that, your regular fingerprinting is us figuring out what your criminal history is and confirming your identity. But that would be a question for the actual Department of Corrections.
I think there might be some information though that maybe the person asked the question heard. Other counties, some sheriffs are, they provide their booking logs to the public that include the name of the person, the date of birth, and ICE would obviously have access to that and would know where to find that person in the case.
There is at the jail, when they fingerprint someone, validate their identity, it is sent electronically to state and compare it against the National Crime Information Center database. So they digitally, it is shared. So I don't know how the sheriff would not be able to do that. I don't know.
Sorry, Director Jose's not here to give you those specifics.
Okay.
I know that Napa, they do have a Pokemon that is open to the public, but there are no date of birth.
No, this is to get fingerprints.
I understand the fingerprint part of it, but it would take some investigation by ICE officials to locate those people. So.
Well, that's
Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation. That concludes our forum this evening, and I want to thank you all for attending, for coming out on a rainy, cold evening. And please join me now in thanking our speakers tonight. And Trustee Jane Donaldson, representing the Napa County Office of Education. At this time, I will dismiss our speakers, and I would like to recognize our moderators for tonight's meeting. Lorrie Weeks. Connie Warren. And Sally Archambault. They were key in making tonight happen. With the committee of three that really made this evening happen. And also, I noticed that Anna Chouteau had to leave early, but I want to thank her for coming and hearing words from her.